Welcome to the I'm Book podcast. I'm April O'Leary, and this is the YouTube version of our podcast. To get the audio version, you can hop on over to Spotify or anywhere that you consume audio podcasts. We are going to jump into some really cool content, so stay tuned for our next guest. We look forward to connecting with you, and be sure to subscribe. And to start your author adventure, hop on over to o'learypublishing.com, where you can map out the entire process and see what writing a book would look like for you. Let's get started.
Welcome to the I'm Booked podcast. I'm April O'Leary, founder of O'Leary Publishing, and I'm excited today that we are talking about publicity for authors. You know, most authors are comfortable with writing, they're comfortable working with an editor, they love going through the design process and picking out their cover design and their interior layout, maybe even getting their website put up. But once you have a book in your hand and a website, what do you do to get the word out about your book if you haven't already built your platform? And so today I have Corinne Moulder here from Smith Publicity. That is a publicity firm that works specifically with independent authors to help them build their message and get media exposure. And we just had a private author meet and greet prior to this on Zoom for our O'Leary Publishing authors, where we got really in the trenches about things that authors can do to grow their platform and grow their media exposure. But I wanted to talk today on this podcast about the ways that a new author can get started with some free resources to build your platform. So welcome to the podcast today, Corinne. Glad to have you.
Thank you, April. Pleasure to be here.
So in working with authors, you've been with Smith Publicity for 14 years now, which I think is amazing. I applaud you for that. And the industry has changed so much with the just proliferation. What am I trying to say here? Proliferation. I'm twisted there. Proliferation of so much media opportunity can feel a bit overwhelming. And so we want to boil down some of the simple strategies you can use to get started. So, you know, in talking with new authors that are just starting on social media, what are some of the things you recommend that they really focus on in the early days of growing their social media following that are going to help them to leverage media opportunities maybe early on and later on?
That's a great question. And yeah, social media, as I said earlier, is kind of the necessary evil for those that really are not very comfortable with it. But I know that's what publishers, media reviewers, and consumers are looking to find out more about the individual behind the product. So I do recommend starting with one platform, not stretching yourself thin, really identifying the platform where your target reader lives. Just quickly, you know, for Instagram, that's very friendly for lifestyle, for parenting, for memoirs. For LinkedIn, that's where you're going to get business, politics. For Facebook, that's where your mature reader is living. So to make sure that you're aligning yourself on a social platform that speaks to your audience is important. And that you're engaged, because if you're stretching yourself too thin and not really apt to keep yourself updated, it actually would have a negative reverse effect there.
And what do you recommend as far as what an author should be posting? Because I've seen authors, and I say this half cringing and half just sighing, who just post pictures of them holding their book or their book cover over and over and over. And I know that that strategy does not work to continue to bombard people with your book cover. So if you take the book cover off of the table and maybe you share that, you know, once every 10 posts, right? What are you posting the other 9 times for those authors who are like, well, what am I supposed to do?
Yeah, it's definitely the 80-20 rule. Only 20% of the time should you be plugging your own book. What you always want to be sure of in building a consistent social brand is that the content you're putting out attaches back to your message, your book, or your brand mission in some capacity. So that may be sharing a news article that excites you, but it also relates back to a concept in the book. It could be, you know, reviewing other authors' books, which I do like to do because, again, the author community is so much in support of each other, as I've come to find that if you're starting to share books that are inspiring you, that fall in that same category, well, that's going to potentially build connection with their followers. And that can be a nice way to start seeing who, is following them. That would be a nice target reader for your own book. I do find that bringing some personal element into it is important, not necessarily what you had for dinner. But everyone, as April and I were discussing today, is building a brand of some sort, and people are definitely looking to find out what the personality is and who the person is behind a product. So bringing in some influence or areas in your life that are personal, but then tie back into the bigger lesson or the bigger takeaway that comes down to your brand and your mission, I think is really important. And on a way to get started, April, I do recommend finding 3 to 5 to start worthy author competitors or books that are good comp titles and reverse engineering to see what they're doing. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. Start to see what posts they're getting the most engagement on and see if you can recreate that with your own style. Also, finding your competitors is also finding who they're following and who's following them. And that gives you a leg up on who to start following as you're expanding your own network.
And I love that idea because it's sort of like thinking of, matchmaking. Let's say you have a friend and they're single and a guy or a girl, doesn't matter. And that their personalities may match or they're interested in the same things. That's true of your competitors, the people that may write a similar genre to you. The people that follow them are likely going to like you as well. So it's just, how are they going to find out about you? It would be kind of trying to connect over in that network. And it's not to say you're trying to steal somebody's followers or anything. It becomes a collaborative community where we all get to be friends together and we all get to read together and share comments together. So social media is very much a conversation. It's not only about the posts that you're putting up, it's about what you're saying and showing up on other people's platforms. So I love that idea of reverse engineering, because there are people that are, you may be in the bottom of the first inning and they may be in the 4th inning and they may have 500 followers already and you have 50. So what are they doing to get there? What are the things they posted? What are people commenting on? I think that's a really smart idea. When you talk about the various different social media platforms, how would you differentiate the types of posts that are appropriate, say for LinkedIn versus Instagram versus Facebook?
So for LinkedIn, we are seeing more expanded story brand posts that are happening. So again, it could be a founder, it could be a consultant, a speaker who is recognizing something, an observation in their everyday, and then building out how that's reflective of the team that they're leading, or a new business endeavor of being a fearless leader and what that takes internally. There is so much more of a lifestyle influence and a personal influence that we're seeing now on LinkedIn, which again is pushing us into some uncomfortable spaces. But I think it's important that there's recognition, the brand story or story brand, it's not going anywhere right now in our current time. With Instagram, and definitely sharing images too on LinkedIn is a way to boost your engagement. With Instagram, it's all about your images. So you may want to kind of have a similar color scheme or a filter so that when people are coming to your feed, it looks cohesive and it looks brand oriented. So you could even, do a square photo instead of the traditional Instagram photo and just kind of make your page a little bit more unique and make sure it matches the color schemes of your website. And again, that you're just pulling in content that speaks to you and to your message. And then for Twitter, I don't necessarily work in that space too much. I said earlier, that's that's definitely the platform for the ambitious author, someone who I think politically where there's, something to talk about every hour. It's really, it's definitely cohesive there. But I am seeing that the image sharing, the video sharing is very beneficial in bumping up posts and encouraging views, and to just bring in that personal element, even in the business setting. It's more and more encouraged.
One thing that I appreciate the distinctions between LinkedIn and Instagram and Twitter, and then Facebook. I have found that Facebook, as far as a personal profile, my opinion, maybe you do or don't agree with me, is unless you've already maxed out your 5,000 friends, don't bother trying to build a Facebook page.
I've heard
initially,
yeah. That's what I've heard too, that it's really hard to build that following.
Because you're, if you think about your own usage of Facebook, you're probably going on to see your personal friend network. You're probably not hanging out on business Facebook pages ever. Mm-hmm. Even if you've liked them, we all get those requests that says so-and-so notified you to like their spa, their restaurant, I'm like, great, sure, give you a thumbs up. But I'm not going back to that, auto shop page to see that they repaired mufflers today or something, like, I don't know. But I think that Facebook really is about building your brand as far as trust and credibility amongst your warm network and growing your warm network. So the way I view Facebook is I'm very generous with accepting friend requests. I don't need to know someone in person as long as we have some mutual friends, and I've grown it, that way. So I would say Facebook I would hang out on the personal side before venturing into a page.
Yeah, there are also on Facebook, I think there's benefit, just like there is on Goodreads with the forums and discussions. There are a lot of closed groups on Facebook where, again, you can't just blast in there if you're accepted and just say, buy my book. But if you're looking to thoughtfully engage with others who are either seeking information that you're writing about or writing about information that you've written about, mm-hmm. you could really get into discussions and commenting on comments and connecting with individuals through the closed groups that are really in line with your message. So I do think there's benefit to the groups as well.
Totally. I 100% agree. And that would be, again, your personal account would request to join mm-hmm. a group that's of interest. So, we have a few authors who have books related to addiction recovery. There's tons of sober groups on Facebook that support sober lifestyle or addiction recovery or whatever. So those authors would want to jump into those groups and start conversing and making logical recommendations. And then that's going to give them exposure for their book, not just by posting their book cover. But as far as Twitter, one thing I was going to say, and tell me if this has been your experience, is I feel people are a little more reachable on Twitter. I had an experience just yesterday where there was an issue with something with an ISBN service course that we had gotten, and we hadn't gotten a reply, and it said, so-and-so who's the host of this course, this is her handle on Twitter. Mm-hmm. And so I hadn't been on Twitter in forever. So I popped on Twitter, I I tweeted her a message, and like within 20 minutes, she responded, got us right in,
Yeah. Yes, I do think the direct message is a benefit. And I know some of our publicists are very, very good with securing media interest by following the journalist and then direct messaging or pitching them through the social platform. So I think that can be beneficial for sure.
So let's talk about book reviews and book review services and how that works for new authors. Because not everybody, we have a recent book, Great Day Today, and he is a football coach. He's a former football coach of a high school down here in Naples, Florida for 21 years. They won some state championships, and his book covers the first 4 years, basically taking a losing team up to state championship. And so he has a quote from Urban Meyer on his back cover, and he has a quote from Dave Wannstedt on his back cover. He's got a deep network in that football world, but not everybody comes to the table with, professional reviews or people who are going to lend their name or credibility to your message. So how does someone go about getting book reviews that are going to help to boost their, I'm going to say, credibility?
Yeah. Yeah, so the timeline on book reviews, it varies. I think there was once the traditional timeline where you had to submit 4 months ahead. And that still is the case for certain outlets, but the honest answer to the pre-launch phase is I think it's undergoing a very big change right now. So we're seeing a lot of different hybrids kind of work on a launch where they'll have accessibility to their book much closer to the publication date. And I think that really speaks to the rise too of the online and digital book review community, because it doesn't take 4 months to turn over that review. So with reviews, I think one of the most important things is to start as soon as you have a media ready file. That's when you want to start taking out the pitch for the book review, because just like a movie, as you understand it, the build up to the movie release and seeing the trailer, that's how we like to see the book review as well work. And you want to make sure you're giving reviewers, editors time to actually sit with the content. So that should be a first initiative, either for self-promotion or in working with a publicity contact, is that you're going after the review. You want to make sure you're categorizing your book properly and that you're connecting with reviewers who are receptive to books in your genre, or they've covered topics that relate to your book. Because a missed mark in pitching a reviewer, you're either going to get rejected, or you might end up with someone blasting you on social media because you pitched them your book and it's just way off the mark. There's so much power, I think, in the online book review and the influencer community. And that's where, again, we're seeing the opportunity for authors to churn out reviews, earned reviews themselves much more, who may not have access to print media. Though print media, again, it's really tough to secure, and we're starting that much closer. So I think to bring in the pitch is personalized. You're showing that the contact on the other end does work on books like yours. We love bullet points when we're pitching. So I would say to not just hang the pitch around one particular theme, though you'll want to lead with the higher arching content of the book, you can break out several themes then within it. So if it's a memoir on addiction and recovery, there could be bullet points on how addiction affected the family life, what the self-care journey was for coming back on the recovery. There could be a tie-in to tactics to stay the course on a journey to sobriety when things are getting challenging, and to start to isolate some of the subgroups of what your book really touches on can also be an uptick in a reviewer seeing that and saying, oh, well, I wasn't sure if the book related to me. And then it was this one bullet point that kind of came out.
And do you think that book reviews for books that are already published are worth trying to secure? Because I know there's the pre-launch phase, and then is it important to kind of keep going and trying to get more reviews, or is it sort of like that ends?
Not necessarily ends. That's where I think the Bookstagram community, the Bookstagrammers are book reviewers who are living on Instagram, and they're posting beautiful pictures, and then they have their review right there. We're hearing about the book talker community that's kind of exploding as well. Again, these are reviewers who are using TikTok as their platform. Those are platforms that I think are very conducive to the post-pub review. I also think post-publication, you have the opportunity for more listicles and roundups where it might be, the top 5 books for National Recovery Month. So it may not be the formal review, but that book-centric coverage may come in being a part of a list with other like-minded authors. It could be an excerpt opportunity where that's always a nice benefit because it's not a review, it's actually your written work. You're giving media something to run as is, and then they have content that they can place that they're not having to spend the time on themselves. So we do think the excerpt is a nice opportunity as well to bring some post-publication support back around. And I think, just also making sure you're considering your book launch, we're seeing it more as like a launch month. So it doesn't necessarily have to be all within the launch day or within the launch week. We're seeing the launch period extend more because I think there's just more opportunity to take a message to so many various places. People are talking about the book a little longer after the book's released.
I think that's an important distinction to make, because the pre-launch period, especially for the authors that we work with in our hybrid publishing company, we don't have an extended pre-launch period because generally speaking, our authors don't have huge platforms already built. We don't have a lot of energy and interest building already because people are anticipating the release of the book because they don't know the author yet. And so we sort of get the book out there and then use more post-publication means to getting their, speaking engagements or talking to local groups or local media features or podcasts, interviews. So let's talk a little bit about that. Like once you have the book in your hand, and you're a new author and you're excited and you believe in your message and you've got a high quality book and that you have readers out there that are interested in that niche. We had a book we just released, The Conscious Divorce, 30 Principles to Help You Choose Yourself. Well, we know 50% of marriages end in divorce. So we know that there are potential readers out there who are going through a divorce who would benefit from that book. So where would you recommend a new author spend their time sort of getting the word out about their book? What have you seen most impactful as far as something they can do themselves? To grow awareness.
Yeah. And there's actually a lot of longevity post-publication, especially for the nonfiction author, because that's where you're really able to dig into the mission and the message and really look at the book somewhat as the business card or that credibility boost for why you should be interviewed or why you should be contributing. We do see the byline article or the guest essay as being a very strong element to lead with post-publication. It's content that should be based around what's in your book or the concepts that are, the biggest bang for your target audience. We like the problem and solution model, and then taking that, boiling it down into an 800 to 1,000 word piece that your name is there as that guest contributor. Should not make mention of the book in the article, but that comes in the bio to follow. And that's a way that we've seen authors getting picked up in mainstream major business publications and also in vertical, smaller circulating trade publications. We've had authors booking speaking engagements too from the byline article and their influence of authority that they're sharing in that piece. When
they're writing that byline article, would you recommend that, for those who don't really know what a byline article, we covered that in our call before this, but just give them a brief synopsis of like, what is a byline article? And then if they were going to take that, piece of information and do it, how do they do it?
Yeah, so the byline article is essentially an informative article, again, that is an extension of the brand or the message from the book. We typically would recommend sticking between 800 to 1,000 words. Do not mention the book in the actual piece because you want to show media that it's an educational piece, that it's bringing value to their audience. So it should not be a sales pitch for your book. That comes in the bio to follow. Again, it's more of your book as a business card or a credibility boost. We do often find that the problem and solution based pieces work very well because it shows quickly to media. It's going to be informative and educational. You want to push yourself to cover things that are being discussed, but you have to bring something unique into that piece. And that may not necessarily be in your book. It could be based on your work experience, questions that you're getting at your speaking engagements or presentations. But to keep it relevant is very important. We often will take the reverse tactic, not necessarily have an author draft the article and then place it. We like to take surprise bullet points. So we'll take a number of article topics and ideas to a specific editor at an outlet and let them dictate what they feel is going to work best for their audience. So then you're not in that spiral of writing and then having to place what you've already written. You want to potentially cater a little bit more to what media is looking for. Of course, if you're not able to place a byline article, you can start to break that piece apart and use the content for social, use it on your blog, potentially upload it or save it for the chapter of your next book, if it works. And I think the problem and solution approach, 3 tips for 5 key solutions, it definitely works very well in that manner.
And what's generally the lead time for those kinds of articles? Like let's say the holidays are coming up, and speaking of sobriety, you want to say 5 tips to stay sober through the holidays, for example. When should an author consider submitting, bullet points to an outlet that maybe they see, their competitive author? Just to tie this all together, they saw their competitive, author on Instagram was featured, their article was featured at the Huffington Post, and then they want to piggyback and say, okay, well, I'm going to try to pitch that outlet. How long of a time does it need? I know magazines are much longer than obviously newspapers, or of course a blog or an online news source, but what's your guideline for that?
Yeah, so for magazines, you can certainly follow editorial calendars. And to think in terms of magazine outreach, you really should be pitching about 6 months ahead. So for instance, we are getting close to the holiday season. The gift guides within the magazine, glossy magazines and monthly magazines they open in June. That's the reality that we're working with. Newspaper placement for byline articles, again, it's becoming a little bit tougher to get in there. I think the biggest place that you're bound to see coverage, even in Fortune or Inc. or Entrepreneur, it's going to be in Entrepreneur Online or Fortune Online, which is still incredibly impactful. I would say you're wanting to start the pitch probably 2 months in advance of when you would hope to see it placed. Follow-up is key as well. And you're straddling that line of being a pest and also just, being a champion for your own brand. We don't recommend following up, whether it's for a book review, an interview, a byline article, with the same pitch you already sent. Bring something new to the table. They may have seen it and just not have been very compelled. So bring some other ideas, bring a new statistic in, something that you'd like to push for. But that, I would say 2 months gives you that time to actually see if the interest is there, and then time to write and properly submit.
So with all of this information that we put out there, and for those of you who are still hanging with us and listening and are probably trying to pick your jaw up off the ground, because it is a lot of work to grow a book business. And I like to think of it, when you have a book, you have started a business and you have started a brand. And now, just like if you were to franchise a Subway or create some sort of widget that you got trademarked, you have to figure out how to get the word out and market that product. And it can feel overwhelming because there are a lot of moving parts. But when should an author consider hiring on a publicist and having them do some of the heavy lifting and be in partnership with somebody who really can say, I've been here, I know what I'm doing, and I'm going to help you? What would be sort of a sweet spot?
I say this 1,000 times a day. It always depends. So I think if you have any interest in developing a formal marketing plan and working with a professional, you can't reach out early enough. Because we know that we're wanting to align our own timelines with the book production timeline. And April, this is part of why we love working with hybrid so much, is there tends to be some flexibility so that we can potentially come together as a team and say, okay, well, if November or I think September is National Recovery Month. So let's backtrack from there. If September is when you want to see the buzz for your book happening, that may be your launch date. And then we want to start about 2 months prior, 1 month prior. We do, as book publicists, we do want to have a media ready file in hand. So that does influence a bit of when we can get started on more of the book centric push. But with so many podcast opportunities, article writing opportunities, and ways to just kind of build SEO for the author name, we can start even before we have the book available and make it more of that expert approach. So I will say, I don't think there's a wrong time to look to bring a publicist on. The sooner the better is always going to be our default answer. But whether that's 6 months prior, 1 month prior, or even 1 month post, have an honest conversation about what goals you're hoping to accomplish with support of a publicist, and make sure that they feel confident they can deliver on a plan that's going to align with your goals, and that together you can build out that strategy. Post-publication support is very common and something that we do very regularly. Again, thinking of the book as a business card model, the publication date doesn't matter so much. For fiction, for memoirs, I think there is more of a desire to have the book read in full and serve as a point of connection. I say that, which sounds kind of funny, not to say a business book can't be a point of connection. We just know author goals are sometimes different on that end. It may be a means to being paid more for a speaking engagement or building out a consultation service. And for that matter, post-publication can always benefit. If there's a real strong desire to make sure your book gets to be the star of the campaign, the sooner the better.
And so to wrap that up, because I think it's really important what you just said is, for you as an author with a book or with a manuscript that you're looking to get published, it's important to consider your personal goals and what you want with the book. And so working with a publicist can go hand in hand with getting your book out there to serve the purposes of getting the word out about you and your brand, building your searchability, building your speaker platform, possibly, if that's what you want to do. And that's one thing that we talk with our authors about from day one before we even sign a contract with them is, what's a win for you? What's the thing that if the book was in hand for you today, what is it? Do you want it for your family, for a legacy? Do you want a speaking career? Do you want an online brand? Are you just creative and you just want a book? Because we want to make sure that we can deliver what we're promising. If someone comes to us and they say, well, I want to be a New York Times bestseller, and they have no social media and no website, and then I can easily say, like, you're out of your mind. We're probably not the publisher for you. And I would never say that directly, but it's important to understand and be realistic with your goals, because it's just like gardening. Like, you plant the seeds and it takes time to water them and to start seeing the sprouts coming up. And I think publicity, it sounds like, is the same way, that you can, start, casting those seeds and all of that, before the book is actually out there, but it takes time to sort of have that germination process happen.
Yeah, it's so true. And it does build upon itself. It's building your media resume. Media feeds into other media. It boosts your SEO. We've had small market, regional or local TV shows that someone's passing through and they see it and it's gotten picked up, or, it's a trending topic and then they're on 2020. It really does happen. It's not necessarily always the case. But I do encourage authors, to take opportunities that might feel beneath them to start. Just like you don't just jump onto the stage for $25,000 speaking fees. You start by, speaking to small groups and doing it for free. You have to think of media kind of the same way and building those stepping stones for sure.
I appreciate your time and your willingness to connect. For those of you who are listening, we connected last week. Corinne and I connected and talked at length just about publicity in general. I had such a great time just, between she and I bouncing off each other a lot of different ideas. And then she was willing to present a really nice slide deck to our author community today. And now to be hopping on a podcast, I feel like I hope I haven't worn you ragged in the past week.
No,
I really believe in what you're doing. I really believe in what you're doing, and I really think it's needed. I think that the skills that you bring to the table for new authors and existing authors, to be able to help them really elevate their expertise and their message and their visibility through media is so important, and something that can relieve a huge burden from an author who has no idea which way to turn or which way is up or down. So I know you have some freebies on your website, and I would like to invite people to go over there and check it out. Do you know offhand what they are?
So we have a capabilities deck there just to give an overview of our publisher related services, which wouldn't relate so much to your followers, but we do have author services there. We have ideas of our campaign examples. You can check out our podcast on our website. I think we just hit 63, or we're in the 60s with how many episodes we have. And that's a really nice mix too of industry professionals, other vendors that we've brought on. We have some of our own publicists who are interviewed there regularly to talk about trends. You can sign up for our newsletter there, which again, it's not really self-serving. It's more so bringing experts in. April, we're going to have you on our podcast. I owe an invitation there with Jen, who I'll put you in touch with. So yeah, there is a lot of content on there. And certainly there's such a courtship and getting to know one another and determining if that's even a potential fit. So there's no hesitancy to reach out and just connect to see, where you are with your project and what viability there may be for.
I love that. So the website is smithpublicity.com. That's right? smithpublicity.com. Okay. I wanted to make sure I got it right. And I'd encourage you to go there, check it out. The link will be in the show notes. And just download some of their things, poke around, see what they have to offer, and really get connected, listen to their podcast and consume their media, and reach out to them if you have a need for ongoing or brand new media publication services for your book. I believe that the books that we publish, our goal is to raise the global consciousness. I know it sounds very lofty, but we do believe that books will outlast any of us listening to this podcast or any other which way. So, books really can change the world, and we owe it to ourselves that if we have invested the time and money to put a book out there, that we really get it into as many readers' hands as possible. So I really believe you can help authors with that. And I really appreciate your time today. And thank you so much for being part of the iBook podcast.
Thank you, April. Thanks very much.
Have an amazing day.
So this has been another episode of the iBook podcast. I'm April O'Leary signing off. Be sure to hop on over to o'learypublishing.com to start your author adventure and see what writing a book could do for you in your profession, in your career, and what doors it might open. We thank our guests for being a part of the show today. And be sure to subscribe to podcasts here on YouTube. We look forward to serving you and helping you get your book out into the world.